Good afternoon. The session before this talked a bit about getting the politician and the advocacy in the right place, as we did this morning in Parliament, to have breakfast there and hearing from the Assistant Minister for Treasury. A bit about my background. Other than I've been the CEO for the National Co-operative Federation for 3 years. In a week's time, it'll be 3 years. But I've been the trade unions movement for 16 years. I'm still part of the trade union movement. I work in the Federation, or rather in Singapore we call the Congress, for the National Trade Union Congress. I was a parliamentarian for 2 terms. So I worked with the political party and Parliament to enact laws and see ways in which we can shape regulations that can protect workers and, to a certain extent, the cooperative sector in order to benefit what we need to see happen. So how do we get things going with all these various ingredients for success? Let me probably touch on this particular slide that is, the gentleman in the middle is Mr. Lawrence Wong. He is the current Deputy Prime Minister for Singapore, and we believe he'll be slated to be the Prime Minister in the next term of government. And the lady on his right is Mary Liu. She's the President of the National Trade Union Congress. The gentleman is the Secretary General of the Trade Union Congress. So Lawrence wanted to have this conversation with different segments from the community at the trade union, with the cooperative, with the sports, and every segment, and say that what is the new social compact that Singapore needs to create in order for the next leadership team to bring the country forward. So he wanted to get ground views as to what shape and what are the new social compact that each needs to bring to the table to make sure that we prosper or evolve in the direction we wanted to go. So he goes around to various places, talking to different community interest groups to hear their views and for each of them to surface and flag out their concern. In this case, for the trade union movement, we mobilized 70 unions with over face-to-face, I believe 1 in every 4 workers to get their views heard. And when we compiled together, we presented to Lawrence what is important to the working people. Now, what has it got to do with the co-op? In his conversation, and that's where the co-op wanted to get into, we wanted to say that let's be in the national narrative. If the leading politician or political leader want to chart a way forward, how does the co-op get a place in the conversation, a seat on the table, to make sure that our voices are heard, our members' demands and ability to consolidate and provide a cohesion for the economy is being put in place. So the various components, whether it is economy, job, identity, environment, physical sustainability, and the likes of it, it's very hard to find a ministry that oversees co-op can do all that. Because if we are a cooperative running childcare, we have to work with a particular ministry. If it's cooperative doing job placement, doing credit, doing mutuals, doing training, they have to talk to different components. So we reckon that there is a need for the cooperative movement in Singapore to be in every single conversation that matters to the next phase of the Singapore's progress. And instead of waiting to be invited to the conversation and to have a seat at the table, we gathered all the co-op together and say that let's have our own dialogue. How do you want to contribute to the new social cohesion that we would like to see? Is it in healthcare with the aging population? Is it with childcare, with the fact that many people like to go back to work? Is it with the supermarket, with the training, with job placement, with caregiver, with the environment, with whatever services that we are out there involved in? How do we get into a situation whereby we are relevant to the new social cohesion, no longer relying on the past? We may have done that for 98 years, but moving forward, how are we still relevant? So we got to start this whole discussion conveying our commitment to help shape the new Singapore cohesion and the new Singapore the new social compact in Singapore with the appropriate political leaders. He and his new leadership team are new. They may not be familiar with what the co-ops will be able to do and wish to do, and therefore we gather the cooperatives together and say, let's have our own conversation. Let's bring thought leaders into our discussion. Let's invite the political leaders into the room to hear their views, listening to our conversation, get a rigorous debate going on, and in the manner that we are doing here. And also, once we compiled what we wanted to do, we went ahead to the government, we went ahead to the media and said that the cooperative sector in Singapore would like to do the following things for the social cohesion of the country moving forward. And so we went ahead of the national narrative. Some would say that you're jumping the gun, but in our opinion is basically say that, look, we've been around for a long time, 98 years, the whole movement. And there is a need for people to be reacquainted to what the cooperative movement in Singapore can do and would like to do moving forward. The new generation, the younger population that we confront today, is not quite familiar with the various business entity and setup that many of us may be familiar with. To them, whatever is affordable, accessible, and quality is what they want. Whether it's online, whether it's through social media, whichever new brand, it doesn't matter how old is your brand. It matters whether you connect appropriately to the needs and demands of the new population. So that's, to me, I wanted to bring this across because when BCCM talked to me about this and said that sustainability, how are you going to grow moving forward? We reckon that the way to grow moving forward is to make sure that all the stakeholders, from the political leadership to the trade union movement and the people movement, are we part and parcel of their solution? Do we put forward our plans? And are we in the conversation so that they can see us as a key partner that's willing to have this solution called 1 + 1 = 3? You have to be able to aggregate different solutions together in order to move the story and the things moving forward. The government alone can't do everything and do not have the resources or reach to do everything on their own. So on my one hand, I work with the trade union, we work with the government on this. On the other hand, I work with the cooperative movement, and we try to work with the government on the same thing to make sure that the cooperative and the trade union movement are in the middle where the conversation takes place. So what's key in this? What's key in this is actually the fact that we got the youth together, the emerging leader, the youth together, and any one of us that's above the age of 40 stay out of the room and of the conversation. We just get the hell out of the room because we have no idea what they were talking about. We couldn't quite comprehend the concern and the issues. So we just let them have a free hand and surface the concerns that they have. And lo and behold, at the end of the day, when we synthesize everything that they have to say, it's not dissimilar to many of us, similar concern, except that it's spoken in a language that you and I probably couldn't quite understand, and it's Slido and the various platforms that the information gets shared through. But the objective and the goals are the same. It is for organizations that are fit for purpose, and what is the purpose? Give me an income that don't make me poor, but give me a career that has a purpose-driven outcome to it. So I want to be as prosperous, but I don't need to be BMW 7 Series. I don't need that, but is the vehicle I'm driving contributing to a zero emission in carbon? Does it offer more than just a means of transport? I'm not quite interested in status, but I'm interested in the ability to be responsible and a good custodian for the environment that I live in. I mean, that's the narrative. And it's similar to what we say, except that it's, like I said, in a language that I struggle to understand. So we decided on this solution in order to ensure that the genesis of some of the co-op came from the trade union. Okay? So we wanted to make sure that that bond doesn't get broken. The ability to work with each other on the membership base that is cooperative and the membership base that is trade union continues to be very strong. Because the day that we sort of operate on a different frontier, we are going to confuse the policymaker, we're going to confuse the limited resources and everybody fighting for their own place in the table or their own front cover in the newspaper and the likes of it. We wanted to see how to collaborate together. And when we go to the political leaders, we say the same thing. How do we work with the trade union to ensure that the voices and the comments you hear will help to add on to the asset of binding the society together? And no political leaders will walk away from that. If I can help assure that workers will be upskilled and retrained to take on new challenges, you can't go away saying that that's no good. If I can say that, the co-op movement will bring together members who want to serve the community, want to have a purpose-driven career and contribution to the community, no political leaders will say no to that. So there was no competition in that sense, but rather a way to collaborate with each other. But how does that happen? It doesn't happen by chance. To a large extent, the fact that we saw the need to put in the conversation where I can bring the cooperative leader with the trade union leaders and the political leaders, help make that a little bit smoother. And therefore, the challenge moving forward is to, how do I continue to ensure that we have the stability in the political leadership, we have the ability to have the cooperative and the trade union work together, to have the size. We are the biggest, as a cooperative, we are the biggest training partner in Singapore. We are the biggest supermarket with the largest footprint and the biggest childcare operator in Singapore, ensuring that every working mother or parents will have ability to go back to work and have no issue finding a suitable childcare from infant to childcare so that you can have ease of mind. And that, ladies and gentlemen, sum up one thing. How to keep it affordable, accessible, and of quality, you basically need size. Thank you very much.
I wanted to take the opportunity to ask Ang a question myself, if I can, which is that the size and the importance of the cooperative sector in Singapore is very well known. But what actually keeps you passionate about working with cooperatives?
Actually, I mentioned earlier, right, I've been in the trade union movement for 16 years. And when you look at what is central to a working person need at the workplace, whether it's advocacy, laws, or protection, that's the core of the trade union work. But a working person will need support for the childcare, his elder care, his parents or her parents will be older, his training needs, his job placement and rotation, his grocery needs, his banking needs. So those services are very much something where, because trade union movement is a very member-based organization, and therefore for the working people in Singapore, they are very familiar with the need to join a membership in order to be part and parcel of this, what I've earlier mentioned as affordable, accessible, and quality. So you do not need to have the best in brand or best in class services, but you need something that's affordable because working person. You need something that's accessible because you have the workplace, you got to travel, and nobody wants to compromise on quality. So the passion stems from the fact that we are actually serving the same working person with his family members. It's just coming from different angle to ensure that it's a holistic delivery of the suite of workplace practices and live, work, and play needs that get addressed through the collaboration work of the trade union and the cooperative movement.
The relationship between the cooperative sector and the trade union sector and working with the Singapore government, how does that help you to operate?
Well, some of you may know Kian Peng. He was the former CEO of NTUC FairPrice. Last month, he was elected to be the Speaker of Parliament in the current Parliament in Singapore. So we're going to leverage on every single opportunity and platform to speak to him about continuing that ability to have a voice and a speaking opportunity with the various key stakeholders and decision makers. That's the first thing. Secondly, we're also worried about how do I get the next generation of political leaders coming from the trade union as well as from the cooperative movement. Sometimes it works through advocacy, but other times we may need to be in the political arena and take out the gloves and do the fighting ourselves on the boxing ring. So there's a need to see how to groom the next generation of political leaders from among the trade union as well as the co-op movement so that we can continue to sustain the ability to mingle with the right stakeholders and getting our voices and our interests heard.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody got a comment or a question? Terry, can I have a mic? Oh, just behind you, Terry, on the right.
Ang, thanks for the presentation. Look, this is a question I'm not sure you'll be able to answer, but whatever you know about BCCM and the cooperative movement here, cooperative and mutual movement here, is there any one thing that stands out that you think is an opportunity for us that we need to grasp?
I was impressed that from a membership base of 10, you now have 100 over across the whole of Australia. I think to get the other cooperatives across the whole of Australia to look up to what BCCM can do, if I may dare to suggest, is we will need to see Melina becoming more busy in the regional and international forum. There's a very simple reason for doing so, because the mind share out there is always a very competed space. Everybody wants to share about what they can do and use themselves as a case study in order to influence how other geography, other territories can sort of look at what you do and say, I think that's a good model moving forward. So you may need to help to find her a deputy or others to support while she gets herself busy.
Thanks. Peter, I'd like to ask Nina the same question, but that's not going to work.
Yeah. I can do a very good German accent.
My name's Kate from Syndex. I wondered, you talked about the next generation in Singapore and, you know, passing on those values which are core to cooperatives. What would be an example of a co-op in Singapore which has really, I suppose, become very popular or captured the imagination of the younger generation, and what's the impact value that's really resonating for them?
There are two parts to this question. One is how do the existing co-op find emerging leaders to groom and get themselves up to speed? There are a few cooperatives that are doing that, and last night I was amazed that Honor Roll had people 44 years, 40 years, 35 years and counting. But you look at the current generation moving forward, it'll be hard to find somebody in the 20-year service, 15-year service. It's going to get harder because they have so many choices and opportunity to work locally, regionally, globally, and they will move their careers around to get themselves exposed to what are opportunities out there. So there are a few cooperatives in Singapore that are working in the Federation to support this program called Emerging Leader Program. We'll bring them to conferences such as these. We'll bring them to ICA, ICAAP, and Balu has hosted a few of them. We'll bring them to WACU, to various platforms in order to expose and let them see how the other international forum works and get them to learn about the networking and the engagement they need to have. Now, what are the co-ops in Singapore that capture the imagination of the youth? Basically, there are three areas. Number one, on sustainability. Number two, on vulnerable community and unmet needs. I had a slide that I didn't quite show. There's a new co-op that started for people with visual handicap. It's called Running Hour. So a person with complete good visual sight will run with a person with a visual disability in order to create awareness about how do you integrate and ensure that all facets of society can be a supporting basis for people with disability. And that captured the imagination of the youth. The slide that I didn't show is the fact that we are going out to position ourselves as a solution for delivery riders, Grab and Uber drivers, and say that these workers put in the hours and bad things can happen to them. They are probably the most unbankable group today, not so much the Arctic geography, but within the urban city, they are those with inadequate employment support and care. And when you go into that arena and say that the cooperative would like to be a part and parcel of the solution, frankly speaking, we don't know what is the solution yet. We just went ahead and said that we want to be part of the conversation to provide a solution to this emerging group of people that may have vulnerability. And from there, we hope to be able to draw in the ideas and the solution that is available. The Federation has no monopoly of ideas. We probably be better served to be an aggregator of ideas and solution providers to channel it to the right group of people.
Thank you, Ang. I'd want to thank you, Ang, for your presentation and for your contributions and answering questions, and actually for your, your belief and vision as well, because, the one thing that I think we get from these exchanges is there's new ideas, there are expansive ways of looking at the cooperative and mutual sector in the future it might have in Australia. We can all learn together. We're all part of an international movement, and so we really benefit from sharing those ideas. So thank you very much. I'd like to wrap up the session.